everybody. Hello. Welcome to the other show in Galactic School 2023. Thank you for joining us.
And today we are very excited. Actually, we have a special guest, and I'm going to read you the beautiful bio, and then of course we will give the whole program for Debbie Storaris. Debbie Storaris o Storaris en español is an ET contactee, interdimensional traveler, and galactic historian. After a fateful extraterrestrial contact experience a few years ago, Debbie awakened to her true star lineage and higher code. Through her ancestral connection with the Akashic records, she has been receiving downloads of galactic historical information and universal spiritual knowledge ever since. She feels that it's a big part of her mission while here on Earth to help awaken others to their own true divine selves and cosmic origins. So, can you imagine the beautiful day we have today with Debbie? Debbie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. I was just telling all of you before we came on, live here that I feel I have a connection to Central and South America. My husband and I have spent quite a few years visiting different countries throughout your beautiful land, and we actually own some property in Nicaragua. We spent quite a bit of time in Nicaragua, and we love the people down there, and we want to see everybody ascend and live to their highest potential. So thank you for having me here. And I understand you wanted me to tell my story about my ET contact experience.
You read my mind. Everybody were asking, what happened? Did you really go to the ship? What happened with the Arcturians? Yeah. And of course, let's start with this beautiful experience. And it was a life-changing experience.
It was a life-changing experience.
And for us, it will be the same. So
yeah, we always want to start with that because that's how I got on this crazy journey. So well, anyway, I was raised Roman Catholic. I was a military brat, or I was part of a military family. So we traveled a lot, throughout my childhood. So I never stayed in one place for very long. And then I myself joined the military. So I was in the U.S. Navy for 6 years, got out and worked for public, the local public health department for quite a few years in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So my experience actually was something I would never have imagined for myself, because initially I didn't even really believe in extraterrestrials. I didn't think they existed. I didn't believe in UFOs.
Really? You started from scratch?
Yeah, I didn't have any interest, any desire to know anything about that. Until I started dating my now husband. He was very interested in the paranormal and loved to read stories about UFOs and aliens and Sasquatch and everything, ghosts and everything else. So that was how I got introduced to it. So it was kind of a roundabout way, but I think in a way, just reading some of the articles that he used to read helped me to become much more expansive, So I was starting to entertain the idea that, okay, maybe it's possible. However, I was still fairly skeptical, so I wasn't that, I didn't really buy into it. That all changed in May 2012. So 2012, as you both know, and as your listeners know, was a very pivotal time in, I would say, in the beginning of our ascension process. So this was the end of the Mayan calendar, and there was a lot of things going on the planet that got me questioning about things. So I one day sent out this massive prayer to the universe. So one night I couldn't sleep. I said this prayer to the universe, and I asked for the divine beings of the universe to help planet Earth because things didn't seem like it was going well for our planet, and there was a lot of people suffering here, um, and we deserved better than this, you know. So I sent this prayer out, and I sent it out to the ascended masters, angelic realm, Jesus, Mother Mary, and then at the last minute, I decided to add the galactic brothers and sisters, not even knowing what I was really saying. But so the next day, you know, everything was back to normal. I went back to work. Nothing happened for 2 weeks. And then one day I fell asleep. So I went to bed as normal. And when I came to, I was in this different reality. And I knew it wasn't a dream because it was so real. I mean, it was like a hyper reality. It's like when you're in the higher dimensions, the details are really sharp, the colors are more brilliant, there's auras around things. It's just everything seems so real. And so I knew that this was not a dream. You know, I was in some other reality. And when I was looking around, I was like, this looks like a starship. You know, it looks like some sort of craft, but it doesn't look like anything I've ever seen in Star Trek or Star Wars because it wasn't metallic. It didn't look like it was put together mechanically. It was more comprised of light and plasma. There were some materials that was plasma like. I couldn't. I've never seen technology like that ever. You know. And then I ended up. I ended up looking around. I was like, wow, I think this ship is guiding me towards it was like some series of lights or something. It was guiding me towards a room. So I ended up following the ship to this room, and it was a large room. And inside this room, I saw 4 or 5 extraterrestrial beings. And I knew immediately they were extraterrestrial. I mean, I'd never seen anything that looked like that here on Earth. These beings were shorter in stature, and I got the feeling they were pulling their vibration down. But I couldn't see them that well because their auras were brilliant, had a lot of colors. It was hard to look at them directly. But as I was looking at them from my periphery, I was starting to make out, you know, their physical features. They had larger heads, larger eyes, smaller bodies, very slim, and they had kind of a greenish bluish coloring. So I knew immediately they weren't gray aliens. And their eyes had pupils and irises. So I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't look like a gray alien to me. Because I read enough articles, my husband's articles, to know that what a gray aliens look like. But I was trying to think of asking them, who are you? Where am I? What is this? Why am I here? You know. And as I was thinking of the questions in my head, they were answering my questions. I mean, telepathically. So I was like, I'm not even finished with my question in my head, and they're answering my questions, you know. And I was really amazed, you know, that I didn't even know they understood English, you know, because I was worried that, you know, maybe there might be a language barrier, but through telepathy, there is no language barrier. So I was able to communicate with them. And so I asked them the basic questions like, where am I? Who are you? What is this? You know, what's going on? You know, and they told me that they were Arcturians from the star system of Arcturus. And they had me within some sort of holographic sphere. So there was a big sphere that as they were illustrating, that kind of illustrated their ideas. So as they were telling me where they were from, there was like this big star map that showed me where their star system was located. And they said, you know, they were connected with the Bodas constellation, and they told me that I was on board one of their starships that was actually located in our solar system. So they weren't real far away. They were probably located between Mars and Jupiter, or between uh, the asteroid belt in Jupiter. So I had an idea of where it was located. And then I asked them, well, why am I here? I'm nobody special. I'm pretty ordinary human, and they said, you've forgotten who you are, but you're actually part of our soul family. You're one of us, and you've chosen to be on Earth to to do a big mission. And I was like, wow, really? You mean I'm not meant to be a health inspector inspecting restaurants, for for El Paso County, health department. But they said, no, you're here on a much bigger mission than that. And I said, well, why now? And they said, well, we heard your prayer, and we figured once we heard that prayer, you were ready. You were ready to hear the truth. So I spent quite a bit of time in that room with the Arcturians, asking them a lot of questions about what was going on planet Earth. So I was like, why is things so messed up on, why is there religion? Religion is really corrupt. Politics is really corrupt. People are suffering. And what they told me was that the third dimension is an artificial construct, and that it's mainly an illusion. It's not even really real. It feels real, but it wasn't. It's not real. It's like we're all playing this kind of avatar part, and there is this sense of trying to help Earth ascend. So we're trying to get Earth to ascend out of the third dimension into the fifth dimension, because that was where Earth was always meant to be. And they explained a lot about religion and about politics and how that all works. And my mind was blown. And like I said, I had a very conventional upbringing. I believed, in all the things I learned in school and all the things I learned from our society. So the things they were telling me were blowing my mind. I was like, wow, I mean, this is amazing, because we feel so stuck in our reality, like, this is the way things have to be, and it's not the way things have to be. The one thing that struck me was about religion, because I was brought up Roman Catholic, and I was brought up that um, you had to have an intermediary to go to God, or to connect with God. And so I asked the Arcturians, so what's your religion? What do you guys believe in? And they said, we don't have a religion. Religion is an earth human construct. It's not real. They told me that they have a direct connection with source, or the divine intelligence, so they don't need an intermediary. So they don't need to have a religion. And I said, oh my gosh, that's amazing, because I was brought up Roman Catholic, and you had to always go to priest for everything, for confessionals and everything else. And I said, I left that religion a long time ago, because it never made sense to me. Like, why, if God loves us, why can't we have a direct relationship with God? I mean, why do we have to go through somebody else who's just as imperfect as we are? So, and they explained about politics, and they explained about what was happening on planet Earth. And the word they used a lot was illusion, that everything here is an illusion. And that, we're all kind of playing this part. We're all part of this false construct. And that it's not as things are not as out of control as it seems, which gave me a lot of comfort, because you hear about all these wars and people getting killed and things are happening, and it's not that those things aren't happening, but it's not having the massive impact that we think it is, because in actuality, what the Arcturians told me is that me and great spiritual family, which is all of us, we're all protected, So if we're here as a light worker, if we're here as a star seed, we're here to help the planet, we're here to be of service, we're all protected. And I can't even begin to tell you how much comfort that gave me, as a soul that used to suffer from anxiety and depression quite a bit. It was like, oh my gosh, if I have these magnificent beings looking out for me, um, how can I even be afraid of anything? I mean, it's just I can't, So the other thing they told me a lot of information about my family, my Earth family. Um, they told me some interesting information about my family's originally from Italy, and my father's side of the family is from north central Italy, which is the area where the Etruscans were prominent, during that time. And what they told me was that the Etruscan civilization was an experimental civilization that was started by the Arcturians. And so my genetic line actually physically connects with the Arcturians as well as my soul genetics, which was amazing. And I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And then they told me, oh, you come from a long line of ambassadors, historians, and scientists. And I said, wow, that's amazing, because I I spent many years working in science. I'm a science major. So I was like, wow, and there's a lot of scientists and doctors in my greater family. So all these pieces, all these things that were I always wondered about started coming together. And what was interesting is that they also kind of showed me around the ship. So they took me around several different spaces. And just the technology I saw was beyond anything I've ever seen on planet Earth, where even rooms was, I think you have a question. But
Yeah, no, yes. Is it okay? Etruscan civilization from Italy, right? Before the Romans.
yeah, before the Romans. Yeah, you got it
They
exactly.
were Arcturians, and that's a big deal in history. I didn't
Yeah,
know
no,
that.
it is. Yeah, no, I was amazed because when I was growing up, my father used to tell me all about, our lineage came from the Etruscans. They even have my family owned Etruscan pottery, because it was like, oh,
Oh my
our
God.
family, yeah, it
Oh
was
my God.
passed down generation from generation. So I was like, holy crap, this is all starting to align, So it started making a lot of sense. And it makes sense that, because the Etruscans actually were a civilization that was very advanced for their time. I mean, they were very spiritually aligned. Women had rights that they didn't have anywhere else on the planet, and they were masters of, art and music. And as a matter of fact, the Romans, borrowed a lot from the Etruscans. So the Etruscan civilization disappeared, and what the Arcturians told me is that they ascended. They didn't get assimilated into the Roman Empire like a lot of people think. That they actually ascended. So their time was up and they were gone. But they did influence the Roman culture, which then went on to influence everybody else, because the Romans conquered everybody else. So I guess in a roundabout way, the Etruscan civilization was successful, but I'm proud to have that heritage. It means a lot to me. And I'm proud to have my Arcturian heritage. But going back to the spaceship, they did show me around the ship. I had the opportunity to. There was one room that actually kind of read your thoughts and provided you with comfort, which I guess for me that was the color purple, which I see you got a lot of purple in your screen here, and Asian landscape art, I guess, because it kept showing all this. I guess that these images were actually art pieces that I did in a prior Earth lifetime. That's what they told me, that it was pieces that I have painted. And I actually have a minor degree in art. So in addition to science, that's actually an Arcturian trait, that we're kind of multi-talented in science and the creative arts. So so Martha can probably relate to that. The other thing that I saw too was they cut me loose, and I was wandering on my own on the ship, and I ended up coming into the centermost point of the ship, which was this big atrium. It was a huge atrium, multi levels, hundreds of beings on board the ship. I mean, it was a huge ship. It was city sized. I think it was huge. And hundreds of extraterrestrial beings that were of all different races. So it wasn't just Arcturians. There was Pleiadians, Syrians, Andromedan. I mean, there were so many I couldn't even figure out what they were. But and they had within this atrium, they had like what I would call, let me see if I can describe this, light shafts. They had rainbow colors, which was kind of interesting. But the light shaft would transport beings from one side of the atrium to another within this huge space. And I was seeing beings being transported all over the place within this huge atrium. And so I thought, well, gosh, I want to go on one of those light shafts, or I call it the light escalator, but it wasn't an actual escalator at all. It was just a shaft of light. But they kept throwing me off. Every time I step on it, it would throw me off. And so finally, the third or fourth time I got thrown off, a tall male being, who I think was probably Pleiadian. Actually, I know he was Pleiadian, but he telepathically told me that I wasn't doing the process correctly. That before I step onto the light shaft, I had to think about where I wanted to go first. So I had to set an intention. So I had to tell it exactly where I wanted to go. It wasn't like going on an escalator here where it takes you where it wants to take you. This is where you tell it where to go. So I was like, okay, I'll do what you say. You seem to know what you're doing. And when you encounter Pleiadian beings, oh my God, those beings are so beautiful. I mean, the Arcturian beings were beautiful. These beings were beautiful. I mean, their vibration, it's like they glow. They have this luminescence. Like, I mean, you can't help but stare at them because they have this luminescence, and this everything within them glows. And then they also, the clothing they wear is so beautiful. It's very form fitting, but it looked like there was some sort of technology attached to their clothing, but it was just felt like it was made for them. I wish we'd have clothing like that here. You just go into and it's made for you. But getting back to my story, I actually got on the escalator and I was going through. I was transported in air, and I was really excited. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up and I was back in my bed, and I was like, oh, well, here. I was bummed because I was back in 3D. I knew I was back in 3D, but I felt that I knew immediately that something extraordinary just happened, and that my life was never going to be the same after this.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, I have a question because
Yeah.
it's amazing. And after see those bright auras and hearing their telepathy field, that you asked yourself all those questions,
Mm.
how did you assume that information of what you live on the ship and all that behind there, and what changed in you? What changed in you?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question because there was a lot of changes after that happened. Actually, what happened after that was I started noticing that my extrasensory perception completely opened up. I mean, it expanded. I was starting to interdimensionally travel. I was seeing UFOs all the time, even telepathically communicating with UFOs. I was starting to get downloads of information about galactic events. All of a sudden, I knew about all these different star systems. I was like, I never taken astronomy in my life. How do I know this stuff? And I was getting so many downloads of galactic wars and galactic events that I thought I was going crazy. I thought, okay, I'm losing it. I need to start. I need to start figuring out what's going on here. So this led me to start taking a lot of spiritual classes in Colorado, which is where I live. But fortunately, Colorado, we're very spiritually awakened here, so we have a lot of spiritual offerings, especially throughout the Front Range, which is Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs. And at the time, I had moved to Castle Rock, which is closer to Denver. And so there was a lot of, different trainings and things that, so I took trainings in everything: Native American medicine wheel, crystal healing, Reiki, harmonic astronomy, everything, uh, so I went through a 2-year period. I didn't tell many people about what happened to me because I was afraid to be ridiculed. So I just told my husband. I told I didn't even tell my family for a long time. I told a couple of really good friends, and I told my spiritual teacher at the time. And eventually, as I was taking more and more of these classes, people found out about my experience, and I got asked to present my experience publicly at a paranormal group in Denver. And that was my first time talking about my experience, publicly to a bunch of people. And I was terrified because I thought, oh, they're going to make fun of me because this is a crazy story. I mean, I don't even know if I believe it half the time. But when I told the story, people were amazed and they wanted to know more about it. And at the same time, I was taking classes on how to read the Akashic records. So people found out that I was doing Akashic readings. I was still working my full-time job, but I was doing this on the side. And so they were, asking me to do Akashic readings for them. And I actually got invited to do a presentation on galactic history and galactic star races at the University of Colorado for a group called Boulder Exo. And that's what got me talking in public about galactic history and Akashic records and star races. And that became, I guess, part of my message. But yeah, there was a lot of changes. I started noticing that after I had that happen, that I went through a period of depression because once you're in the 5D and you go back to the 3D, you don't feel the same. You start missing the higher dimensions. And so I would drive to work every day crying because I was like, oh, I miss my Arcturian friends, and I miss the starship, and I miss all all the extraterrestrials. It felt so good there. I mean, when I was up there, I didn't even have a chance to be afraid because these beings just bathe you in love and acceptance, and you just feel the love energy from them. And I miss that because then you go back to work and you have your boss yelling at you, and so it's just like, it's just like, oh, wah, 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 here we are back to the normal freaking 3D, so. So I spent quite a few years suffering and struggling because I didn't feel really aligned with my job or with what I was doing anymore. And it took me a while. Had a lot of fights with my husband about it, but I finally retired from my government job in 2019. And then in 2020, that was when I was asked to be interviewed on Gaia TV. And things kind of exploded from there. I was still doing readings. I did readings for over 10 years. And I did thousands of Akashic readings for people all around the world. And I was starting to see trends and patterns with certain star lineages. Like, oh, well, Pleiadian starseeds tend to have this tendency, and Arcturian starseeds have this tendency, Syrian star, and I saw just these correlations because I've done so many of these readings. And so I hope that answers your question. Karna, did I pronounce your name right? Karna.
Yes.
Karina.
Karina, yeah,
Sí, Karina, Karina Rascon. Okay, could could it be that starting to Akachiko's records opened channels for this telepathic communication with Arcturians? You think is
yeah, I would say it
maybe
helped, definitely helped. I think just going on board the ship opened up the channels of communication, because then I was starting to connect with my Arcturian guides all the time, and and they used to send me like little song messages when I would drive to work just to kind of encourage me, to keep going. Um, but it was I don't get the strong messages anymore because I don't commute to work anymore. But I have this beautiful relationship with the guides, with my Arcturian guides. Sometimes they make me do crazy things, and I'll tell you a couple of little stories here. One time I asked my guides, "How can I connect with you better? I want to have this connection." And they said, "Well, you need to meditate every day." And I said, "I hate meditation. I love my monkey mind. I don't like meditating." And they said, "Okay, you don't like to meditate? Well, we're going to send you on a crash course to learn how to meditate." So they sent me to stay with the Buddhist monks in Crestone, Colorado. Crestone is kind of like the Sedona of Colorado. It's a very highly vibrational. It's located right in the middle of the San Luis Mountains, and it's a very very high vibrational place. But if you ever go through the town of Crestone, you'd be like, "What the heck?" It's not beautiful like like Sedona and all built up and beautiful. It's like this little podunk town. There's like nothing to it, but there's a lot of uh, you know, uh, spiritual communities there that have their ashrams or their centers there. So my husband and I went and we stayed with the Zen Buddhist monks, and we meditated with them for a week. Where every day, every morning, every night, we're meditating. We had to go through the whole Buddhist process of learning how to meditate, and so yeah, they were right. I did get a crash course in meditating, and I did learn how to astrally project myself out of my body while meditating. And it was a really good visit for me. Uh, so my guides also had another request for me. My guides make me go on these little adventures, I guess. I don't know. Um, so one time I was meditating and I had this vision of a kite, and I was flying a kite. And I asked my guides, "What did that vision mean?" And they said, "Well, we're trying to show you a new exercise for you. We want you to go back to Crestone and fly a kite." And I was like, "Okay." Never flown a kite before in my life, but whatever. So I purchased a kite, and it just so happened that my spiritual teacher was having a women's retreat down in Crestone. So I was like, "Oh, that's perfect." So I I joined her retreat, went down there, flew the kite, and what I found out from flying the kite was that there's an Arcturian portal in the San Luis Mountains. And it was an innate, so there was this energetic connection between the kite and me and the portal. And I was getting downloads about my mission, because before, the Arcturians, when I was on board the ship, the Arcturians didn't really tell me much about the mission I was supposed to be on. But then they shared with me my mission, and I was like, "Oh wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense." Uh, and I've been on my mission ever since. And I don't know. I guess I have this really kind of cool, I would say, relationship with my guides, where I talk to them pretty much every day, and I receive messages from them. And sometimes it's very mundane, and other times it's very enlightening. Sometimes it's just, I don't know, just normal stuff. And then other times it's like something like, "Oh, go fly a kite in Crestone," kind of thing. But my guides told me during that time that I was going to be a public figure, that I was going to be sharing my message all around the world. And I didn't believe it. I was just like, oh hell no. I hate public speaking. I'm an INFJ on the Myers Briggs, so I'm an introvert. There's no way I'm doing that. And my guides for years was trying to prepare me for the next phase of my journey, um, but I didn't believe them. But now look at me. Now I'm just kind of I've actually transitioned recently out of doing personal Akashic readings towards teaching people how to do Akashic readings. And my goal is to get the message of galactic history out to where it's in the mass consciousness, where everybody knows about it, where it's not like, oh, this is just weird woo-woo stuff and you're just making it up. Where it becomes, maybe even part of the curriculum for children, so that's my goal anyway. But that I hope that answers your question. I know it was kind of a long answer, but I know you have more questions for me.
I have a question. It's let me okay. Could we simple mortals access that portal in the mountains?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody can. If I can, anybody can. There's nothing special about me. I'm not like the be all end all in galactic contact. I actually struggle, I think, sometimes. I have to work at it. I think the reason why the guides asked me to fly kite because it was something physical I could do that made me feel like there was a way of connecting. Since then, they haven't had me fly kites anymore, except maybe for recreational purposes. Um, but I believe any of us can access portals, any of us can access alternate dimensions, and any of us can access the Akashic records, and that includes the galactic Akashic records.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Noe?
Just the greetings from Spain to Aurora. Very
Okay.
interesting. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Oh, thank you, Aurora.
And then we have two more. I know time is flying, but oh, okay. One more greeting for Beatriz. Thank you. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing
thank
your
you
life.
very much.
It's priceless.
I'm honored to
Then
be here. Thank you.
for now, maybe two things. A little bit, maybe, where is this one? Maybe for next program, because that's huge. But galactic history was part of the topics of today. At least how far back do you remember? And because usually people talks about Atlantis and Lemuria, but it's
Yeah, I
way
know.
more.
I
So
know.
a bit about
There's
that.
much.
And then the second question.
That's just a blip. That's just a blip in the entire galactic history. No, I'm happy to share that with. I actually remember events that happened even before Lyra was created. So Lyra was the home of
Wow.
human consciousness in our galactic history. So just to give you guys just a kind of like
Like
a brief,
Lyra, for
yeah,
the person who will translate.
Lyra, yeah, that's how you guys pronounce it. So just to go back a little,
That's how
yeah,
many years? Like
millions of years ago,
millions.
millions, yeah. So just to give a backdrop on what happened in Lyra, okay, is that initially what happens with our universe, or we're part of a multi-universe reality. So there's multiple universes that go through this process of separating from source and then coming back to source. So it became our turn to separate from source. Initially, this separation was supposed to happen in Andromeda Galaxy, but Andromeda Galaxy was too high vibrational to sustain a physical reality. So the beings in Andromeda Galaxy decided there's light beings and they're ethereal beings. They're co-creator beings. They decided we'll create another galaxy that's similar to ours, but it can sustain lower dimensions. So the Milky Way actually separated from Andromeda Galaxy. A lot of people don't know that, but the Andromeda Galaxy is the mother galaxy, and the Milky Way is the baby galaxy. Okay, so we got Milky Way. And so a lot of these Andromeda Galaxy beings, because they invested so much into this project, they decided we're going to create a portal between our galaxy and theirs. And so they created this star portal in Antares, which Antares is in the constellation of Scorpio. A lot of people recognize Scorpio because it's part of our zodiac wheel, but Antares is the biggest star, and it's in Scorpio, and it's one of the four royal stars. So, so there was a portal that was a gateway into the Milky Way. Galactic Center was developed between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So Galactic Center is actually at 28 degrees Sagittarius. So it's right pretty much between the two signs. So from there was Elohim beings. These are co-creator beings that decided to create physical planets. And they chose Lyra because it had the conditions most favorable for physical life. So Elohim beings are kind of like angelic beings. They're not really physical. They can sometimes show up in a human appearance, but they're etheric beings, and they're co-creator beings. So these were beings that decided they were going to create physical realities. The reason why they chose Lyra, now Lyra is a very tiny little constellation. If you look at it, it looks like a kite. It doesn't look it's not like Orion, which is huge. Orion's big. Lyra only has 13 stars in the entire constellation. But the reason why they chose it was because it was located close to Galactic Center, and it had the conditions that were most favorable for physical reality. So initially there was feline beings and avian beings that inhabited these planets. These were beautiful paradise planets. And then these beings created alternate versions of themselves. And then eventually they created two human races. So they created a mother goddess consciousness race, which was the Vegans, the beings that were associated with the star of Vega, which is the biggest star in Lyra, also known as Alpha Lyrae. And then they created Father God consciousness beings that were the white Lyrans, the more Caucasian version. So a lot of Caucasian genetics come from the Lyran races, and a lot of the darker skinned genetics come from Vega. That's a gross generality, but that's the best I can explain it, keeping things kind of simple. So these races were living in their beautiful paradise planets, and they lived there for thousands of years. They were very happy. They never experienced any adversity, never experienced any trauma. They were just living their lives. They did, evolve and change, so they were starting to develop some technologies, particularly the Vegan races. Even though the Vegan races was Mother Goddess consciousness, they were probably more advanced in technology than the white Lyrans were, because these were very practical people. They were highly spiritual. Many of our healing modalities originated from Vega. They were the first ones to come up with plant medicine. But they were also practical, and they knew, we're living in a physical reality. We need to have technology, so they developed, beautiful starships. Now, the white Lyrans were also starting to get some technology, but they were behind. Okay. So they didn't quite have, weren't quite as advanced with that as the Vegans were. Because of that, this is what caused their downfall. Okay. My understanding is that they didn't have any interactions with a race of beings that was located very close to them. So if you look on the star map, and I have one right here on my wall, here's Galactic Center, here's Aquila, the Eagle constellation, here's Lyra, and here's the constellation of Draco, which is where the reptilians were located. So these are the reptilians that we all hear about. Now these reptilian beings were been in Draco for a while, but this wasn't their origination point. They actually originated from another universe. They got kicked out of this other universe and got transported to the Draco constellation. And Draco was had barren planets. They didn't have much resources, so they were constantly looking for resources. And they saw the Lyrians that with their plentiful planets, or paradise planets with lots of resources, and they thought, well, we need to conquer that airspace. We need to conquer that place. And they had a different consciousness, so they weren't necessarily service to others. They were service to self, so they didn't necessarily care about the well-being of the beings on Lyra. They just wanted to conquer that system. And so they didn't contact the Vegans because they knew Vegans had pretty decent technology. We're going to contact the white Lyrians because they're just a bunch of farmers, and we can bamboozle them with technology. So they reached out pretending to be friendly and saying, hey, we notice you have a lot of resources. We need resources, but we also noticed that you guys need technology, so we're going to do a trade. So they had this treaty. And it was enticing for the Lyrians because they knew that, they were behind with technology. And so, they reluctantly agreed to this agreement. And it was to their downfall because they didn't realize that the reptilians had a very sinister agenda, that they wanted to, they just wanted to take over their planets. And so they were using opportunities when they were visiting Lyra to scope out their weak points, of which there was many because they didn't even have weapons, So they ambushed the Lyrians, and this started what we now know as the Lyran Draconian Wars. Okay, so the Lyrians, the Vegans didn't want to get involved initially, but they eventually couldn't help but get involved because they were part of that constellation. And they knew that the Draconians were going to come for them next, so they ended up also becoming part of the wars. And they say that at least 3 to 5 planets in the Lyran system got completely annihilated during the wars. 50 million Lyrans lost their lives. They did have some survivors, but they barely escaped with their lives. It was probably the most catastrophic event that's ever happened in our galaxy, or maybe even our universe. So these beings just never knew, they never knew what to expect because they never experienced any adversity. And so they went through a lot of trauma. There was a lot of lives lost. They lost their home worlds. They were sent out into the vast, unknown of the galaxy looking for new homes. So the Lyran ships that survived ended up going everywhere in the galaxy. As a rule, they say that most of the Vegan ships ended up in Sirius and Orion, and then the majority of the Lyran ships ended up in the Pleiades, Aldebaran, Hyades, which is also part of the Taurus constellation. So there was kind of a lot that happened, and also Andromeda and elsewhere. Okay, so they just really spread out, and even some of them ended up on planet Earth. So there was very early colonies of extraterrestrial beings that visited and colonized planet Earth. This was way beyond Lemuria and Atlantis. So the reason why this is so significant to us today, so we hear these stories and we're like, okay, but how does that relate to us here on Earth? Okay, and that was happened millions of years ago. Big whoopee. But it does have a significance in the sense that uh, we're doomed to repeat history if we don't understand history. Okay, so if we don't understand where we came from, if we don't understand what happened to our ancestors, our galactic ancestors, we're doomed to repeat that here on planet Earth. The Lyrians also, they got complacent. They were happy with their, fairly comfortable lives, and they weren't paying attention to things, and they ended up losing everything. And how many times has that happened on Earth, where we've had civilizations that they weren't paying attention, they were just kind of taking things for granted, and then they ended up losing everything. We see that repeated in history over and over and over again. There's also some personal lessons. I see this a lot with Lyran starseeds, that a lot of them go through personal lessons of betrayal, of loss, grieving, anger, homesickness, feeling this I guess sense of loss and forgetfulness, and they have to go through lessons here on Earth to I guess to heal that to some level. I see it happen over and over and over again with many Lyran starseeds, and there's a lot of them here on Earth. As a matter of fact, the Lyrans were the founder races, of all the other races. So a lot of us, even a lot of us that are starseeds, have had past lives in either Lyra or Vega. So even genetically, we have a connection with those systems. The Lyrans were very physically oriented, so a lot of our concepts of physical labor, just good hard work ethics, our concepts of physical sports came from Lyra, because they were a father God consciousness reality. And a lot of our concepts of healing, of spirituality, of connecting beyond ourselves came from Vega. So I understand from the records that Ayurvedic medicine, which was prevalent in India for thousands of years, actually originated from Vega. So they were the ones that first came up with the concept of that. So this is like, I mean, I think it's just amazing how we have carried over information and knowledge, and even soul lessons from our cosmic forebears. That this has been this is what I find so fascinating, that even millions of years later, we're still going through a lot of these same lessons. And I just feel honored to be able to share that, just even through your school. And there's many more stories, many more galactic stories. There's stories about Sirius, stories about Andromeda, stories about Pleiades, that I hope I have the opportunity to share. I know we're kind of limited on time here, so I'm going to kind of close here. So thank you for allowing me that opportunity.
Well, thank you for this incredible presentation. As a conclusion, or to close up the program, a little bit to give us hope, a little bit about the ascension process, because at the end,
that's a great question. Yeah. Okay, dear Debbie, can you tell us more about this ascension process?
Sorry.
Yeah. So my understanding is that although it may seem like things are getting really bad on this planet, what's actually happening behind the scenes is that a lot of these governments and these the elites, their whole construct, all of it, this whole 3D construct is being dismantled. A lot of these political systems are being dismantled. A lot of systems, these religious and educational systems are also being dismantled as we speak. While that's happening behind the scenes, the rest of us, the ones that are awakened, that are on this path, we we end up seeing things changing in our realities. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but do you notice how the sun now seems white and not yellow anymore? Like things are really bright. That's a sign that the planet is ascending. Okay, and I noticed like even here in Colorado, like we've never had green like this. Like Colorado is very dry. It's like a high desert, like what they called high desert. And everything's so green, and there's so many flowers. There's flowers I've never even seen. Just in my, my around my area, my neighborhood here. And it's just like wow, what's this feels like a different reality. As far as the overall process, my understanding is that we're seeing more and more of a separation between the 3D and the 5D. We're all on the same planet, so it's not like this planet's going to be destroyed and we have like a new planet. We're still going to be on the same planet, but what we're going to notice is that we're going to feel more of a separation from the 3D, where we're not going to be transcending between dimensions anymore like we have been for the last decade. It's going to feel like I'm 70% of the time I'm in 5D or in 4D at least. And it's going to feel like there's going to be a separation between maybe family members or friends or colleagues that maybe have chosen not to be part of the ascension process. So you're going to see a lot of people starting to attrition out, maybe through death, maybe through some event. I don't want to make it seem scary or anything. It's not going to be scary at all. It's just going to feel like a natural falling away. But I noticed that just within my own life that I don't have contact with people I used to have contact with even 5 years ago, because our vibrations have changed, and we're going to be connecting more with people that we're vibrationally aligned with. That are going to be more on our same soul tribe, our same soul path. My understanding is that things are going to really start to shift at the end of this decade, early next decade. The dates I keep seeing is 2028, between 2028 and 2032, we're going to have actual extraterrestrial contact where everybody knows about it. There's not going to be um, you know, any hiding or anything like that, anything that's going to be swept under the carpet by our governments. We're all going to know about it. We're all going to have opportunities to connect with these beings. And my understanding is the first race that's going to contact us will probably be the Alpha Centaurians, because they're located the closest to us. And I would say, ascensionally speaking, they're the ones that are just ahead of us, as far as the ascension process. So they're not like, say, a Pleiadian that's like, thousands and thousands of years ahead of us. The Alpha Centaurians, even though they are more advanced, they're not that so far advanced that they can't connect with us. And they're the most Earth human looking, I guess, out of all of them. But Tau Cetians is another group. Tau Ceti is a star in the Cetus constellation. It's also located fairly close to Earth. And Venusians. We're going to have contact with Venusians. So it's going to be amazing, I think. I just, at that point, there's no turning back. There's no, the governments can't hide anything anymore. I think there's going to be full disclosure. Things are going to shift and change. And that's how I see ascension. So I know Martha had a little question here that I want to read. And okay, looks like she put it up on the screen for us. Thank you, Martha.
Martha Chesay, you mentioned that the Arcturians contacted you because they had heard in prayers. Many people want to contact them, but do not get a response. Who do the Arcturians contact?
That's a great question. It's one that I get a lot. Like, why me? Like, why me? Because I'm, like I said, nobody special. But uh, I honestly don't know fully, or wholeheartedly why they decide to contact some people and not others. But my understanding, just from my intuitive hit around this, is that I think they're looking for people that are really desiring to be of service to the planet. So I think so. When I said that prayer, I was um, I was setting an intention that I wanted to be of service to the planet. I was asking for help, but I was also asking of how can I be of service. Before I actually had this whole extraterrestrial contact experience, I was actually part of an animal assisted therapy team. I did a lot of volunteer work for 6 years. I worked with the Wounded Warrior Project. I worked with military veterans, military, actually active duty military. Colorado Springs is located right next to Fort Carson, which is an Army base. There's also the Air Force Academy there and Peterson Air Force Base. So it's a very much a military kind of city. But so I did a lot of work with the fallen heroes families, wounded warriors, all of it. I was part of the American Red Cross. My therapy cat Piglet was also part of the American Red Cross. She had a little cute little badge, said American Red Cross volunteer, so that was really cute. And she wore a little vest. And we visited hospitals, we visited libraries, we helped children. Children would read to Piglet. Piglet was a little hairless cat. She's a sphinx. So she got everybody's attention because she had no hair, but she was the most beautiful soul I've ever met. Just we visited Alzheimer's wards. We worked with a lot of elderly. We did that for 6 years, and it was one of the great joys of I just feel so honored to be a part of that. So I think just in those 6 years when I was doing that work and then sending out that prayer, I sent out this clear message that I was ready to be of service, and I wanted to be of service to others. And I think that's who they choose to contact. That's my, I guess, interpretation of that question. It's how much are you willing to give up of yourself to be of service to the planet and to everything that's on this planet? And that's when you'll start having contact. At least that's how I see it. Anything else?
Dear Debbie, actually, we have a bunch of things, but I think for the first introduction, it's perfect. We will save the question anyway, or maybe send later on, you'll see, because for the first time, because then we have a lot about what's going to happen too. I mean, you triggered, of course, all the most important questions. And
yeah, that kind of happens a lot of times, is that a lot of times I'll get on a Q&A or a webinar and it just generates more questions because people want to know more, because obviously we're limited in time and I can only say so much, so please hold your questions. Most likely I'll be back on Galactic School. So
thank you.
Yeah, so we'll have to do this again soon. But yeah, please hold your questions and save them for next time, because I'll love to answer them more and answer them all, answer as many of them as I can.
Thank you. Definitely, we will copy them, save them, and we want to thank everybody. Thanks for the comments. We will translate in Spanish, in Portuguese. No, don't worry. Maybe next time we will have subtitle at the same time, because people want it right now.
I know. It's like I feel bad. I don't speak Spanish better. I have to double up on my Duolingo or something. But anyway, thank you, ladies, for having me on. This has been great. I love the energy. I love what you guys are doing for Central and South America and Spain. This is amazing, and Portugal too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Marta. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for sharing your story and part of the cosmic history. Thank you for everything, and thank you to the entire Galactic School team.
I'm sure Marta wants to say thank you too.
Hi, Martha. That's my Arcturian star system.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you for having me.
Wait for you next time.
Yes, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
A
you.
big hug.
See you
Bye
Thank
guys.
you.
bye.
Yeah.